Hi, Rabbi Lewis wishing you an early Shabbat shalom. And our Torah portion this week is PARASHAT Tzav. And a lot of people come to this Torah portion and say, oh man, nothing really happens in it. And it's kind of the point here of PARASHAT Tzav is that it's not so much about what happens, but more about what we can do. And the difference between, letting things happen and doing is an important distinction. And I was thinking about this website I once came across that was showing photos of old abandoned amusement parks where the maintenance had stopped being done and nobody was going to them anymore and nobody was really taking care. And basically all the trees and the grass and the weeds, everything had overtaken them. And so you would see these old roller coaster tracks basically being knocked over by tree limbs, or water slides that are kind of rushing through, no water by the way, but rushing through tall weeds and completely unusable. That nature had taken everything back because rather than doing the maintenance on them, they'd let nature happen all around it. And when you just let things happen, things fall apart. In our Torah portion, Parshat Tzav, the word Tzav is command. It's the root there of the word mitzvah, or commandment. So we're having the commandment going to the priest of how to do things to do the sacrifices and how to dress so that we honor God in holiness. And it's a pretty important thing to say, don't wait for things to happen, but you have to do things. And this is ingrained in the Passover story that we're about to celebrate here. Even though we're in Leviticus, we're talking about Exodus. That's one of the funny conundrums of Judaism. But the Israelites were slaves. Slavery had happened to them in Egypt. And for 400 years, it was their reality. And then they finally cry out. There's an action that goes to the heavens, and God hears the cry and then decides to liberate them. And then God goes to Moses in the burning bush and basically says, you must go directly and take an action that I'm commanding you to go to Pharaoh. And don't just take no for an answer. And we see that multiple times. Because if you take no for an answer, you're still letting things happen to them. And eventually Pharaoh says, go. And they get to the sea, and Moses has to raise his staff. And the Midrash will tell us about Nachshon ben Aminadav, who before the waters part, he actually has to step into the sea and show a matter of faith before miracles happen. So the things that we do, or the good things that can happen to us, happen because of the actions that we can take. In Leviticus, it talks about how when we want to draw God near to us, that we first have to reach out to God through sacrifices these days, through the sacrifice or the worships of our hearts and our minds, and also the mitzvot that we do for our fellow neighbors. But we don't just let things happen. In a time of uncertainty, we can sit back and say, there's nothing that I can do. Lots of things are happening. But a feeling of despair can come across when we do that. That's why any action that we can take, say, what is within my power to do? Something positive. Maybe something positive is just making your voice heard, attending some form of protest, maybe calling political leaders, letting them know either your satisfaction with a vote or your dissatisfaction with a vote. Maybe giving them an urging to particularly vote a certain way based on your conscience and what you'd like to see happen in the world. Maybe it's seeing somebody who's directly affected by the things that are happening around us and doing something that can sustain them for a day or help them get on a path towards improving their situation despite all the things that are happening around us. So, at Parashat Tzav this week, and as we celebrate Passover and the great liberation of the Israelites, remember that things don't just happen, especially the good things don't just happen, unless we first take an action to do for ourselves, for our neighbors, our community, our families. And that's how we make good things not happen, but how we give them as gifts to ourselves and to our friends. Anyhow, have a Shabbat Shalom. look forward to seeing you for Shabbat services, also Passover Seder. If you're not coming to temple, I hope you get to a great Seder wherever you go, and Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom, and happy Passover.